So we have our next guest on for tonight. Her name is Deborah Mello, and she's been writing for quite some time. She's going to tell us exactly how long, but she has a lot of books, and you've been on our radar for a while. We just hadn't had an opportunity to have you on the show. So, and she has a new book that just came out in July. So she's going to tell us about that book and her other books because this is her first appearance on the show. And we welcome you to Black Authors Matter TV.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
And it's a pleasure to have you. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
So tell us about your writing career. Just go back kind of to the beginning and then bring us up to the present time.
Well, I've published my first book in 2003. It was a BET romance novel.
Okay.
And my career started in romance and has kind of morphed into its own journey since then. I've published some 68 titles to date and hope to do at least 68 more before I finally decide to give it all up. Um, I've
That's a
written
lot of
for
books.
it's a lot of books. I've written
Mhm.
for BET, I've written for Harlequin, I've written for Kensington, and I have my own imprint, McGregor Press.
You're a
Okay.
busy lady.
I'm
Oh,
sorry.
she said you're a busy lady. You
Well, I
got cut
try to
off a little
be.
bit. Um, can you bring our audience up to speed on BET books? A lot of people may not know that BET had a line of books that they were
Right.
publishing.
It was a romance line.
It
Mhm.
was. They were pretty much the first ones out here publishing African American romance novels by African American authors. And the likes of Beverly Jenkins and Brenda Jackson, and many of us got our start with BET. About 40 years into my career there, they were then purchased by Harlequin.
Okay. Okay. I didn't realize Harlequin purchased them.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Rhonda, did you know that? Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I didn't know. I thought they just dissolved. I just thought
No,
they stopped publishing. I didn't
no.
know Harlequin bought. So when Harlequin bought them, did they didn't keep the name BET, they just made everything under the Harlequin umbrella or imprint.
Yes. It was,
Okay.
we became Harlequin Kamani.
Oh, the Kamani.
The
Okay. The
Kamani line.
Kimani.
Hmm.
Okay. All right. Well, that's so that was in the early 2000s because I remember uh, when BET books, so when they launched,
Yeah.
we opened our store in 2000. So we were carrying a lot of the books that they published, and we would have some of the authors at our store at book signings and so forth back then. So now you said you started off in romance, but you've gone in different directions and sometimes coming back to romance. But what other genres are you writing?
Right now I'm writing in romantic suspense, with a little bit of mystery. I've written two literary novels. Um, I just like to write. For me, it's about telling a great story. Uh, and wherever that may fall, so be it. With my first book, I didn't know it was a romance novel until it was published.
I was
Um,
actually just about to ask you that. Do you go into the book planning that it's going to be contemporary fiction or romance or suspense or what have you? Or do you just kind of tell the story and then they kind of tell you where to, your characters tell you where to go?
well, with my first book, I assumed I had written the next literary tome. I was going to be #1 bestseller. Well, I found out with some very clever editing that it was a romance novel. And what I discovered with my own writing was that if you centered the story around family and then someone falling in love, it's naturally a romance story. Um, throw in another element like a little suspense or a little mystery, and then you've just added on to it. And it's romantic suspense. So
Okay.
I love romantic suspense though, but I like romantic suspense with an element of adventure. I don't want it to be okay, they met, they hated each other, they fell in love, then something happened that tore them apart and they came back together.
That's
And
the
then
plot. That's the plot.
well, romance was very formulaic back
It
in the
was.
day.
It was.
It was guy meets girl, guy and girl fall in love, guy and girl fall out of love, guy and
Hmm.
girl get back
Get back
together
together
again,
and
happy ending.
happily ever after.
But
Right.
there are people who expect that. They
Yeah.
read romance novels and that's the only formula they want.
Well,
So
what's interesting for me was when I started writing, as I said, my first book, I didn't know it was a romance novel. Die-hard romance readers were very quick to tell me that I didn't follow the formula. And at the time, I was not a romance reader. In fact, I admit to being very much a romance snob. So I had to learn how to write romance. So that's when I started reading other romance authors, Beverly Jenkins, Jacqueline Thomas. I was reading anybody and everybody. And what I discovered was there was this amazing community of women who were writing incredible stories. And I really just wanted to be a part of that.
So you said you were a romance snob. What does that mean? What were you turning your nose up, and what were you turning your nose up to, and what did you actually crave?
Because, I had never read romance. So in my mind, I fell into the thought process that it wasn't as good as quality literature. So, it just you dismiss it. But again, when I read it, it's like, no, I was very mistaken. And then I discovered, there were those who had the same attitude about my own books. And I quickly had to defend that. No, I know I am writing a great story. It might have a love element to it, and be considered a romance, but it's still a great story.
Right. And
Well,
it's all
that's what it's all about.
Mhm.
Writing a great story.
Yeah.
Now you have 60 something, 68 titles. Is that what you said? That's a lot of books. So Tony Bonita, who's one of our regular viewers, you may know her. She's in
I
Florida.
do.
You do? Okay.
I
Tony knows
do.
everybody in books. She said, Take Me to Heart and Brawn are two of your best books.
Oh, well, thank you, Miss Tony.
So tell us about those two and then bring us up to the present day.
Oh, wait,
That's
before
Tony.
you start on that, I've got
Okay.
to include what Angela Anderson said. She said
I
Braun is
missed it.
next level. Deborah, what?
Okay.
Braun is next level.
Next level. Okay. Now, is that one book or a series?
Actually, Braun is a part of my I always like to tell a story where I am challenging myself. So I started a series, the ABC series, where I'm telling short romances that are not your typical romantic stories. Braun is the story of a man who finds himself homeless. And one day in the library, runs into a woman who he had been previously attracted to. And suddenly they start catching up, but he doesn't want to let her know what his situation is. And it's about that community of people whose lives have diverged from what has been expected of them, but they are still out here fighting for what they believe in. And Braun fought for love.
Okay. Well, because I was writing down the title because I didn't want to forget it, because since Tony Bonita and Angela Anderson recommended it, I'm going to add it to my order list for my next book order so I
Please
can read
do.
it. Now, do I need to read the A and the C too? Or is B for Braun? Is that
B is for Braun.
okay?
You do not need to read them together or in order. They are very unique stories. They stand on their own.
Okay.
They are very quick reads. So, you're not going to get 900 pages. That's going to take you a while. I guarantee you can finish it in a weekend.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
We
Well, I'll
like
put
quick
it.
read. Well, I like quick reads, depending on what I'm trying to do. But if the book is good, I don't mind getting lost in it now.
Well, with my One Love short story series, I've challenged myself to give you a short story where you feel like you have just had a 5-course meal
Yeah.
and ended it with the best dessert that you could have ever imagined.
Yes,
Well,
I
that's a
love
way to describe a book.
right.
Well, I'm definitely I'm adding that to the list. I'm not a big romance reader. I'm not a romance snob. I just uh I have there's so many books to read in so little time. And so I try to, and then I'm in 2 book clubs and I have the show. And so I'm like, I have so many to be read books that I really shouldn't add. But when you're a book lover, you're always adding books. It
You
doesn't
are.
matter. It doesn't matter how many books you have.
Yes.
There's always more that you can get. And
This
even
is
if you don't get to them right away, you can look at them and see that they're there. So they're waiting. They're calling you.
I'm a firm believer that books are just like shoes. Every woman should have as many as she wants.
I'm stealing that from you. Stealing.
Yeah, I just bought some shoes. So online. I normally don't buy shoes online, but because the fit,
Mhm.
I buy clothes. I buy most of my clothes online. I would say 80% of them. But shoes are a little bit different. Um, and sometimes they don't work, but then sometimes they do work.
Mhm.
And I bought shoes online that they didn't work for me, but I gave them to somebody else. I've done that with other things,
Like
especially
a book. It
not
might,
for sale.
some
It's
books
true,
work, some
but
books
shoes
don't.
cost more.
I don't know, with the price of books going up these days, you
They
never know.
have gone up. They
They're
have
getting expensive, but it's the paper. Remember, there was a paper shortage a couple years ago,
Yes.
and everything was kind of at a halt. We couldn't get anything
Yeah,
printed for a while,
right.
and I guess after that, the price went up. They said just in case,
Hmm.
we have to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Yeah,
I
because the
find it
hardcovers used to be
fascinating.
25,
Mhm. I
and
find
now
it
they're 30
fascinating
or
when you
more.
when you consider, with the influx of ebooks, they're almost expensive now as your paper books are.
Yes, and it's digital. It's digital.
Mhm.
There's
It
no
makes no
trees that have
sense.
to be killed.
Yeah.
So I don't know why they're so expensive. The ebook, but I read the actual either paperback or hardcover. I was reading Kindle for a while, but then I switched back to paper. I just something about it. It's more real.
Mhm.
And at some point, I am gonna start listening to books. Rhonda told me how great it is, and other people have said it's great, but I haven't made that journey yet. I tried it
No.
once.
Yeah.
It wasn't. Maybe it has to be the right book and the right circumstance. When I tried to do it, when I tried it, I would fall asleep. Like within a few minutes. Maybe I waited too late in the evening, and it just will lull me to sleep. But in your car, if you do a lot of commuting, that's a good way to do it. But
That's a
I don't
great way to do it.
do a lot of
Yes.
commuting, so my trips are generally short. So
I don't know. In my car, I'm gonna listen to an audio book, but I live in the DMV. I
right,
have
so you're in
to
your
listen
car
to
a
an audio
lot.
book. I'll go crazy.
Yeah,
So
here being on 45 is where you spend a lot of time. If you have to get on Interstate 45, that's the bugaboo.
So now you said you've written 68 books, so it means you've been writing for quite a while. What are you seeing? What do you see as some of the biggest changes in the industry, especially when it comes to the art of writing?
I think some of the biggest changes that I've seen, and I think we will continue to see, is who publishing determines are the literary favorites.
Good one.
You know, at one time, you know, Black women, you know, we were easily dismissed. Our books were not given consideration. Then we became the darlings of the publishing industry. And then that shift went to men and male writers. And then that shift then went to Asian writers. And I think we will always see a shift in who the publishing industry deems should be the darlings of the moment. Um, you know,
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it, because that does come and go. It change. It's never the same. It
it's
never,
never the same.
it never stays stable. You'll be hot for a few years, 5 maximum generally, and then it shifts. I've noticed now there's a lot of African writers,
Mm-hmm.
males and females,
Females.
more than I've ever seen before,
Right.
in a variety of genres.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that's a new hot group, but I'm seeing that a lot more than 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm. And I think when you look at it overall, there's a greater acceptance of the stories of others. You know, wherein it was very difficult for an author of color to get published and then to have their books recognized. More of that is happening now than when I first started. Um, you'll see libraries are starting to rethink how they shelve their books. Um, you know, a lot of them have gotten away from the African American section. You know,
Yeah.
they're just putting the books on the shelf in the genres wherever they belong.
And, I've
Um,
always looked at that two different ways, because on one hand, I used to only want to find the African American books, so I liked the fact that they were in one section. However, I kind of resented the fact that they were just kind of lumped together.
right,
Like if I'm looking for, let's say, an academic read, and sometimes it's right next to, let's say, the street fiction or the urban fiction or something. It was just all mixed together. Just because it was a Black author, it
Right.
was in one.
hmm
Which
I
is
think
right
that,
next to a religious faith book.
yes, right next to the
Which is
religious faith.
yeah, which is
exactly.
right next to a memoir.
Mhm.
So
And I think one of the problems, you know, it was a rock and a hard place for African American authors because we might have had our own space, which was usually in the back
that it
of
was
the
in the back of the
bookstore,
bookstore.
which meant that other readers weren't going to search us out.
Right.
So a lot of non readers of color never found us. So
Mhm.
it didn't allow authors to expand their
The
readership.
readership, right.
You know,
And
now that
well, no, part of that is because, and it's so funny that non-Black people would see a book with a Black face on it and just automatically assume that it wasn't for them,
right.
that they wouldn't be welcome to read it, or they'd be looked at funny if they wanted to read it. And we welcome other people to read our books.
Exactly. You know, I always found it amusing that, you know, non-Black readers could easily say, well, I cannot relate to a Black couple having a romance, but we're okay with a shapeshifter and a dragon and a woman having a romance that they could relate to, but they couldn't relate to us having a
Right.
romance.
They could relate to something that wasn't human,
Exactly.
but they couldn't relate to us who are humans, except for we have a little bit more melanin, and that's it. And so I don't know how you can say you can't relate to a Black couple falling in love. That's so basic. I mean, everybody falls in love at some point.
At
And
some point.
so how
I
can
can
you not relate?
appreciate I can appreciate that, there were those readers who were willing to say, oh, let me give this a try to
Right.
dispel that I can't relate
Mhm.
ideology. They learned that, we love just like everybody else loves. We hurt just like everybody else hurts. We have the same trials and tribulations trying to find love. So,
And the
Absolutely.
paradox or the irony, I don't know which was the correct word, is that we're expected to be able to relate to their love stories.
and that's all we've ever gotten. So,
Yeah, so let make it make sense,
Mhm.
just doesn't make. And I was thinking when you were talking about that the African American section was always in the back of the bookstore. It's really like a metaphor for the back of the bus. It's like the same kind of dismissive positioning that you're in the back.
Mhm.
And then now on during Black History Month, they bring a few titles to the front and put them on the front table
Mhm.
in Barnes and Nobles. That's the store that I go to in my area when I go to a bookstore, but I normally don't go to a lot of bookstores because I can order books myself from
What
as
I
a retailer.
what
But
I have loved most about the romance community in particular, and Black authors especially, is that we are always willing to get into the fray and fight for what we know is right. We write for great stories.
Right.
We write great stories and we're willing to fight to have those stories told. Um, so, and when we don't do it alone, I don't think there are many Black women authors who can say that this journey has been very solitary for them. There's always someone who went ahead of us who's reaching out a hand to pull us along with them. Um, you know, I always give credit to Beverly Jenkins and Brenda Jackson, Jacqueline Thomas, who were wonderful mentors when I started out. You could call, you could ask questions, you could send messages, and they never, ever, ever turned their backs on us and said, well, I can't help you. Um, they were the first ones to offer assistance. And, I have watched authors that I started with and authors who came behind me, and we continue that pattern each and every day.
Beautiful. I think
yeah,
that's the way it should. We should be reaching back and helping the people who came behind us. I mean, I have a whole tribe of authors who I love. They know that they can call me right now, and
Mm.
I'm going to help them. And I have a few authors that I can call and
Right.
say, I need your advice on something. And I love that because when I get off the phone with them, I'm like, "Whoo, okay, I'm about to go write a book." I wasn't thinking about it. I called them.
You know what? We are an amazing community. We
mm,
really are.
it's true.
It's a sisterhood, with a few brothers tossed in, and we know we have each other's back.
Now we only have a few minutes left, and we want to talk about your new book. In the time we have left, Colton's Blizzard Hideout. So, do
Yeah,
you have a copy of your book there, the
I
new one? Okay, Colton's Blizzard Hideout. Okay, and you do you write under Deborah Fletcher Mello all the
I do
time?
all the
Okay,
time, all the
okay,
time.
okay.
Um,
So that's how if people want to distinguish. I don't know if there are any other Deborah Mellos because there's a lot of people with the same names.
Amen.
Um, but Deborah Fletcher Mello is definitely a way to stand out. So tell us about Colton and the Blizzard and the Hideout.
Colton's Blizzard Hideout is actually one of Harlequin's popular Colton family series. It's book number 8 in the Owl Creek family line of 12 books. 12 authors are invited to write one book um, about a family member, and we have continuity theme that runs through all of the books, as the mystery unfolds and plays out to the end. I was the very first African American author to be invited to write for the Colton series. The Colton series has always been very light and bright. Um, I was, in fact, my very first book, the couple was white, and I was very, oh, okay, I can do that, not a problem. But I've also always pushed to see a little color. So you're getting more interracial stories being told in the Colton series. And I hope one day they will actually have an African American Colton series that will play out. But it's been a lot of fun. The authors that I write with have all been very welcoming. And Colton's Blizzard Hideout. Lizzie Colton is the sister. She's got three or four brothers, but she's the only girl. She's kidnapped, and she is rescued by the most delectable drink of chocolate that you will ever meet.
I want a delectable drink of chocolate. I like that.
Yes. And he becomes her hero. She's traumatized, and she knows that he can protect her and show her how to protect herself. And once he saves her, she then becomes a woman stalked, and he's a man looking to capture whoever is doing harm to her. So
Okay, so when you're part of a group, we got 1 minute left. When you're part of a group that's writing like a series like this, do you all collaborate when you're all writing in
what
terms
happens
of
is, at the beginning, we're all given what's called a book Bible. And the book
okay,
Bible literally lays out the entire series from start to finish. And
ah,
you're given your characters for your story, and you essentially know where your story falls in line with all the other books and what that story is going to be. As an author, you then have to get very creative and make it your own.
okay.
And then, we're always back and forth. Well, I plan to have my character do this. How is that going to work with your character in the next book? Or would your character have done this in the first book, because I'm going to make him do this in this book? And so there's a lot of back and forth, and we work well together to ensure that we do have a good continuity flowing through.
And so the characters get to make cameos in the different books then.
Correct. Because they're all related. There's
Okay.
siblings and cousins, and in this particular series, her parents divorced. Mothers were twins, married brothers, then separated and changed partners.
Oh,
What you can expect with a Colton book is a lot of drama.
I want to ask more, but we're at 9 o'clock now.
We are actually 9:01, 8:01. So Deborah, thank you so much for being a guest. Show your book cover one more time so people know what your latest book is called, Colton's Blizzard Hideout.
Yeah.
And we really enjoyed our time with you. Glad
Oh,
we could
thank
get you to
you.
come on the show and continue writing. And we're in agreement with you about the 68 more books.
Oh, well, anytime. Anytime. It's been a pleasure. I am honored. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you for
Okay.
being. You have a great night.
You too. Bye-bye now.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.